Welcome back to J.P.s World of Wrestling. I'm your man J.P. and as usual, thank you so much for joining me. We're talking about Summerslam. Last time I talked about Summerslam 94 and 95. We're kind of lumping them together right now since summer is almost over. And I want to kind of get through these. I'm not going to do them all because SummerSlam's still going. And in the later years, I just didn't really care very much. So I'll probably just cover what's in the anthology and that'll do it. So today we're talking about SummerSlam 1996 and 1997. Now, in 1996, things are starting to get a little bit better for the WWF. You know, like I said, 94, 95 was kind of transitional, and they had a lot of, cartoony kind of gimmicks and whatever. And, it was just kind of not a very good time in WWE. But by 96, things are starting to pick up. By this time, after Summer or WrestleMania 12, now Shawn Michaels is the champion. There's a new champion. His name is Shawn Michaels. We all remember that. And so Shawn Michaels is here, and he's, doing the best he can. In 1996, he has a pretty formidable opponent for the main event, but we'll get there. And I enjoyed 1996 WWF and WCW. It was a big year for WCW, and we'll talk more about that. But yeah, Savio Vega versus Owen Hart. Pretty good. Both guys are really good in the ring. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Owen Hart, so this one was a pretty good match. And then they had a fatal four-way match for the tag team titles. So Smoking Guns, Godwins, Body Donnas, and the New Rockers. Which I believe the Smoking Guns won this one. So, I don't know. British Bulldog versus Psycho Sid. Actually, I really enjoyed that match. I've been a Sid fan for a long time. And the Bulldog was always pretty good. So, that was good. And then the next match on the card, Goldust versus Mark Merrill. Yeah, Goldust was one of those characters that I never really got into. And I know some people thought he was great. Some people thought, oh, he's supposed to be weird. He's supposed to, okay. Never really, I can understand why Dustin Rhodes, kind of broke free from the Dustin Rhodes character because it was too much like his dad. So he had to do something completely different. And this was different. I'll give him that. And he was successful with it. So there's that. And then Mark Merrow. I liked Mark Merrow, but I liked him better in WCW as Johnny B. Bad. When he came to WWF, they couldn't use that character, although Vince really liked it, but they had to change it up. So Vince just called him the Wild Man, Mark Merrill, hoping that it would be like Johnny B. Bad, but it wasn't. So then they just kind of eventually turned him into like kind of a boxer. And, anyway. So then, so the next match on the card, this is one that I actually enjoyed because once again Jerry Lawler was in a fun feud with somebody, but this time it was Jake the Snake Roberts. So Jake the Snake Roberts had come back to the WWF after being gone for several years. This time, he's not in quite as good a shape, but he's professed his faith in God. He's become a Christian, and he's got a new snake, and he wears this kind of vest top to kind of cover up the fact that he's not as in shape anymore. But he was doing this feud with Jerry Lawler, where Jerry Lawler was kind of making fun of him for being alcoholic, and was kind of doing that sort of thing. There was like a segment on Raw where Jerry Lawler poured some whiskey on Jake's face, and Jake in reality did not like that, because he said, could have been iced tea or whatever. It didn't have to be whiskey, because Jake really was having a problem with alcohol at the time. So they have this match. I believe Jake the Snake Roberts was victorious. He did beat Lawler with a DDT, and that was a kind of a fun match. And then they had the Broiler Room Brawl. So this was actually really cool. This is actually a really cool match. This was The Undertaker versus Mankind. So Mankind had just come in as an instant rival for The Undertaker because they needed somebody to work with The Undertaker. They needed The Undertaker to have like a formidable rival, somebody who you think could actually beat The Undertaker. That was Mankind. Mankind was actually the most realistic opponent for The Undertaker as far as somebody that could actually maybe even beat The Undertaker. So they had this barroom brawl, or boiler room brawl, rather, not barroom, broiler room. And so Undertaker walks in, and the camera follows him, and then Mankind attacks him, and they start fighting each other in this boiler room, and Mankind starts using boards and stuff, hit the Undertaker, and they get dirty. There's dust all over their trunks. And then the winner of the match would be determined by whoever makes it back to the ring and takes possession of the urn. Well, so the Undertaker was the first one in the ring, but that's when Paul Bearer, his longtime manager, turned on him, hit him in the head with the urn, knocking him out, gave the urn to Mankind, and so Paul Bearer walks off with Mankind. Mankind actually defeats the Undertaker, and the Undertaker starts a big epic rivalry with Mankind. And this was actually one of my favorite feuds of this era, because the Undertaker, who doesn't love the Undertaker? The Undertaker was awesome, and Mankind, Mick Foley, he did a really good job of portraying somebody that could actually beat the Undertaker. So that one was fun to watch, I have to admit. Okay, and so the main event, Vader, Big Van Vader from WCW versus Shawn Michaels. Now this was an infamous match, because at one point Shawn Michaels goes to the top turnbuckle, goes to jump off, but he lands on his feet and stomps Vader, and then shouts something at Vader. Like, I think he shouts, "Move! Move!" And then he stomps him, and I guess Vader missed his spot or something. But anyway, Shawn Michaels had big opponents, and it's just too bad that, Brett didn't have the same kind of, because even Shawn Michaels had better opponents. So anyway, but yeah, that was pretty fun. So SummerSlam '96, A-OK my book. Sorry, one of the discs fell out of this anthology set. It's SummerSlam '97, which is what we're talking about next. So SummerSlam 1997. Again, it's starting to get a little better. WWF, that's kind of the last year to me that WWF was actually the WWF that I know it. It was after this that they started going with all the Attitude Era stuff. So, yeah, steel cage match right off the bat. Hunter Hearst Helmsley versus Mankind. And, that was pretty good. Mankind was good with pretty much anybody he worked with. And Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H, he was good with anybody he worked with. So that was a pretty good match. Brian Pillman versus Goldust. That was a pretty good rivalry where Brian Pillman started hitting on Goldust's wife, Marlena. And I think whoever won this match would have to wear a dress. And so Goldust won the match. So therefore, Brian Pillman had to wear a dress, I think, on the next night. Brian Pillman, who died later on in '97, which was very sad, because he died very young. So, yeah, it was something. Godwin versus the Legion of Doom. Legion of Doom had come back to the WWF for the whatever umpteenth time or whatever, but they worked with the Godwins, and this is one where I believe they did the Doomsday device, and it actually injured Henry Godwin. It almost broke his neck. Actually, I think it did kind of break his neck. Luckily, he's such a big guy and has such a strong neck that, it didn't paralyze him or anything. But, yeah, it's interesting. So, yeah, European Championship. The WWF had introduced a new title. It was the European title, and the British Bulldog won it in a tournament. And so now he's in a match with Ken Shamrock for the European title, in which I believe Bulldog was able to beat Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock, of course, known for his UFC days, but he was actually a professional wrestler before he was an MMA fighter. Not a lot of people know that, but anyway, so then, 8-man tag, Los Boricuas versus the Disciples of Apocalypse. Now, since this was the time of the NWO over in WCW, and WCW was kicking the crap out of WWF at the time, But it's because they have this faction called the NWO. So Vince McMahon thought, oh, I guess people want factions. So he created like 4 separate, like 4-man factions, but that's not really what people wanted. And so this one was Los Barranquas versus, Disciples of Apocalypse, which was like a biker gang. So, I don't know, whatever. So, Intercontinental Championship match. This also was an infamous match because it was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Owen Hart, who was the defending champion. So, this is the match where Owen Hart pile drove Steve Austin and injured him. He got an injured neck and an injured head, and this is probably what ultimately cut Austin's in-ring career short, because it was a really bad injury, and it was an accident. Owen Hart didn't mean to do it, but it was still, a very bad injury. So, Steve Austin had to, he had to go to the hospital, and it caused him a lot of problems later on in his career. And so, from that point on, he never really was the same. And I never heard if Owen Hart ever really sort of apologized to him. It was just, Austin never blamed him. It was just an accident. But anyway, Owen Hart was really good at stalling so that they could, check on him or whatever. So there's that. Yeah, so, okay, so yeah, WWF title, Undertaker versus Bret Hart. So this is one of those opponents that was good for Bret Hart, but this is the one where Shawn Michaels was the guest referee. Shawn Michaels and Bret were feuding at the time. Shawn Michaels went to hit Bret with a chair. Bret ducked. Shawn Michaels hits the Undertaker with a chair instead. Undertaker's out. Bret Hart covers him. So then Shawn Michaels reluctantly counts 1, 2, 3. Bret wins the title, and that's it. And then we're off to the races for a feud with Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, which would culminate into a match at Survivor Series, which we all know what happened at Survivor Series 97. There's no need to rehash that. Anyway, so yeah, it wasn't long after this where Bret Hart left the WWF and went to WCW. And unfortunately, that's kind of where he ended his in-ring career. So, anyway, that was SummerSlam 1997. Overall, a pretty good event, I have to say. So, what I want to know is, what are some of your memories from any SummerSlam? Doesn't have to be this one. Could be any of them. Leave them in the comments below. Some more fun stuff coming up on the channel. And I will see you next time.